Okay, so approved. We'll move then to Dan's treasurer's report.
So there are no operation income or expenses since our last meeting. Sorry, Mike, I'm just getting up then. I'm just finding the agenda then to make sure I have the other items that we wanted to talk about. So yes, no income, no operational income or expenses since our last meeting, which was as expected. The other update I wanted to talk about was accounting software, as well as our 2019 tax return and financial compilation. So the tax return and financial compilation is underway with Robert Small, our accountant, who we've used the last number of years. It is due November 15th, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. The tax return is due, so don't see any issue there. We've been back and forth a couple times on little questions and stuff. The other thing is the accounting software, QuickBooks. We discussed the last couple meetings about getting QuickBooks in place. So I have it up in place. I have it linked to our Fidelity account, which is very nice. Bob Small's office, he's going to backfill some of the prior year data, he's going to attempt to. He thinks he doesn't see much of an issue, but he's going to backfill some of the prior year data for us because he thinks he has it all on records that he can upload easily. Okay. And then we should be good to go to get it populated go forward as well. And a couple really good things. One, I think it's going to give us like the exact reporting and I was actually going to try to do some of the same reporting for 19 to at least have a starting point then to reference in 2020 in the software. But what we've talked about that we think would be helpful is, income by property, income by farmer, expenses by property, expenses by farmer, etc. That a little bit more on the operational side of where we see expenses, what are expenses related to. So when that return and compilation is done for 19, we'll have Bob come in and, or come onto a Zoom and just do a quick run through with everybody. And then, we'll keep moving forward on getting the QuickBooks up and running too.
Sounds very good. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for staying on top of that. It's coming together nicely.
Oh, and we can, it'll be nice. I think we can, it looks like at least as of now, we'll be able to send out, payment or invoices essentially to the farmers, and they can even just pay it electronically. Like they won't even have to write checks and everything. Like if they so choose, they can pay electronically. That'll make life easier. So should be good, I think.
Yeah. Dennis, are you talking or can't hear you?
Yes, I was talking on mute. My apologies. Okay. Dan, just a question on that. When the rent is due, when would those invoices go out?
Yeah. So I think ideally they would probably be sent in December. And if I'm not mistaken, rent is basically due January 1. And I think we have I think we're like 230, like I think we're like a 2% discount paid within the first 30 days. Right. I forget it is exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
But they'll be able to actually have it listed right on our thing then to remind them of that.
Right. But the plan is to have those out in December.
Yeah, I think that probably needs to be in December. Yeah. But I thought I'd wait till I actually get that piece in there running to show you guys what it looks like.
Right. I think giving our farmers an opportunity to pay it in 20 versus 21 at their discretion if they have it in December sometimes. It could be a preference. So I think getting them out in December would be ideal.
Gives them that option. Yeah. And that would be nice because then at the bottom of the invoice could say if paid by such and such a date, 2% discount applies that's good. Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else, Dan?
No.
All right. Next item is a summary. I'd like to summarize the meeting we held two nights ago with Rachel Onuska from the Bucks County Conservation District. Tim Stewart was also on our MS Teams call, and she went over very thoroughly, I thought, in a nice presentation of the 3 conservation plans for 3 of our properties, which included Stackhouse, Clearview, and Makefield Brook. And I'll just summarize quickly, and please add as needed. First thing I'd like to have in the minutes is that we're very lucky to have Class 1 and Class 2 soils on our farms. So it kind of adds to the need for our good stewardship of those properties. That's less than usual for Rachel, as she said. Many of her farms that she oversees conservation plans for are Class 3 and Class 4, that is poorer soil. So that was good to hear. I thought that was very interesting too. That was definitely one of the most, I thought, interesting points that she had. Even some of those farms that we sort of thought might not be as good, they may be lower on our tier, but on par with Bucks County in general, I think. Yeah. And I wondered whether Lancaster, or I don't know, Dennis, do you know what you were dealing with your farm out in the West?
Well, there's really no comparison. I was in Western Pennsylvania, and it was all old hard pan clay that every field needed to be tiled or it was going to be a swimming pool. So the fields we have in Lower Makefield are very productive and rich soils. There's no doubt. William Penn did a good job picking this location.
Good, very good. So with Stackhouse, where we have some pretty deep gullies, they're going to do some moving of soil and shaping of the contour of the land, and the plans for that should be complete, according to Rachel, January, February of next year, and then implementation in May or June. Dennis asked Tim whether that was okay as far as their planting schedule goes, and he felt that he's going to be putting soybeans on that field, so it seemed okay, and he didn't have any problem with that. Wouldn't interfere. And then on Clearview, my takeaway was that Tim will continue to do the work that he had pledged to do, that is to maintain the terraces there. If they needed to be built up a bit, he was still going to, planning to do that. But there wasn't going to be any moving of terraces or the like. And then we have that, he has put bales of hay and some stone, et cetera, in a gully that formed towards Taylorsville Road, and that will stay in place. So far seems to be working. That's Clearview. Then on Makefield Brook, because Rachel said that the Bucks County Conservation District wants to take advantage of some cost sharing that they can do because of the Core Creek watershed designation that field has. Good evening, John.
Hey, sorry I'm late.
That's okay. That's okay. Welcome. We're just going over the conservation plans that we reviewed Tuesday. So that's going to be put off till October of 2022 to take advantage of that cost sharing. And we felt that if you looked at a priority list, that would fall below Stackhouse, Clearview as far as what's needed to be worked on. But then, Dennis, you said that you would keep an eye on that to see if there's any deterioration over time.
Right. I think some of the intermediate steps that have been taken are fine, and I was just very pleased to hear the report that they thought the work could be done on Stackhouse in this next spring. I think that's wonderful. Also, it may be worthy to point out that when she says Stackhouse in terms of a cropland conservation plan, that includes, from our property perspective, 3 properties: Stackhouse, Farmview 1 and Farmview 2,
Yes.
looking at those three as one unit. So it really is encompassing, her plans are now encompassing 5 of our 9 properties, which I think is very, very good.
Yeah, good point. Good point. That's right. And also one of those properties, sort of sub-properties within Stackhouse, is Mr. Kaplan's property. And John, this is to remind you that he's, of course, subdividing that and has on sale a plan for the back of his property there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and we wanted to be sure, and Rachel reminded us to ask the township to be sure that there's a solid storm runoff plan that and I'll ask you this, wouldn't that go with the sale or at some point with plans for that?
Yes, that would be part of the saldo process or subdivision and land use development process. So we would definitely, if you have a concern now, there hasn't, I don't know that there's anything that's been brought before the board lately on this. Let me pinch the Zoom.
Yeah. I think it's on basically, it's still, the lot is still for sale, so I don't think there's any construction plans, but
Yeah.
just so you
We dealt
know.
with this for a while because there was also a sewer connection issue associated with this property. So I have not heard anything about it for a very long time.
We don't, and by the way, it's not that we think there isn't an issue or is something right now. It's just that we want to have it on somebody's radar to make sure that when something does come up, that we make sure that it works from our side too.
Yep.
And what we saw was a map of this section right here. And it, right, this line, can you guys see my mouse there too? Right. Okay.
Yes.
So this line right here, John, you probably remember, is where we have that big ravine going down and we have a lot of drainage. So what we saw was a map of the surrounding area that drains right there. So most of these homes on Leadham's right here and most all of these homes on Brookfield, their entire properties drain into that. Interestingly, only part of this back corner drained into this. So the rest of his property actually drains the other direction. So it's basically the entire area where I think a new home would be built drains this direction.
And if that were the case, that would make that ravine, it'd probably carve into it significantly, right?
Yeah, just that much more of impervious surface area that's draining that direction. So that was all. We just want to make sure that when it does come up, that we get alerted and that the thought is around the drainage and the water going to the fields isn't necessarily a suitable answer.
Yeah.
And I emailed Jim to alert him to that and copied everyone. So I haven't heard back from him, but John, what you're saying is that we probably wouldn't get anything to review until there's a building plan in place.
Correct. Yeah. At this point, if it's still for sale, the property, and he hasn't found a buyer. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And John, we can provide you're the township manager, whoever, the map that Dan is describing that shows the water catchment area.
Yeah.
That is an important area into that. So it's not to say that a house there would necessarily be a problem. It just needs to be managed and drained and permitted, carefully.
Right. Especially if we're going to be moving soil around and making new contours, and then along comes, this property and kind of could ruin it. We don't want that to happen. So the other thing that was interesting to me is that the Soil Conservation District did an analysis of crop rotations, and all of the fields that we looked at, with whether it's alternating corn, soybeans, or doing continuous corn, came under a certain limit that they have, a certain metric that says that they're okay. The soils will retain enough soil without any winter cover crop being put in, That being said, Tim Stewart plans to, and already does, when he can, put in winter cover crop. So I think we're covered in a number of ways there. In fact, she mentioned on Makefield Brook that it's a shale type soil, and Tim's running continuous corn there, and that's okay. That's okay for maintaining the soil there.
And the stewards do maintain continuous corn on Makefield Brook and on Clearview. Because
Right.
The deer situations in those properties would just make soybeans non-economical. The deer would just destroy the beans, cause a lot of damage to the corn, but at least you can still get some out of it. So yeah, I thought it was overall very good news from Rachel in terms of the conservation plan.
Yep. Yeah. Very, very, very good. Good job. If there's no other comments on that, we'll move on to some buffer issues we have with Farm View 1 and Leadham. Dan,
Yep.
you have that there?
Yep. All right, so let me just share this again. All right, so just to back up here, Farview 1, right? The lower part of Dolington and Woodside, and then 1642 Fairfield Road, which is this property set back here beside the retention basin. And so he reached out to Greg at the township office just to say, like, that talk about some of the water runoff that he experiences, especially in the wintertime. And we had previously gone back to Greg and said, this is likely to be something that can be addressed after the field is harvested. Mike and I were able to make it out, though, over the weekend, just do a walkthrough in this area. Just want to kind of give you guys a little bit of an update of what we see. But next steps are basically, I'm going to call Mr. Patel, who lives here, try to set up some time to get out there with him to really understand what he is seeing. So a vast majority of this entire field drains down through the center towards this retention basin. There is a piece up at the top level here. It's sort of the back end towards the trees, and then sort of this little line right here, give or take. That area and some of these homes drains down this direction right here. And I think you can even tell with the way this map looks, the corn is planted east-west right here, which may not necessarily help the situation on the drainage that's happening right down here. You can even see this little gray spot there. That's a rock garden that was put in, I think, to help slow down the water drain off that's coming over this direction, which basically crosses his driveway and then I'm assuming keeps going into this backyard, although there's this line of arborvitae right here. I don't know if that slows it down potentially. I don't know. But even when Mike and I were out there, what was that, Saturday afternoon? And was it Thursday? We had a big rain.
Rain.
Was the rain Thursday, I want to say?
Yeah,
so it was, it was very wet. This little corner down here was very wet just walking around. So again, I think it's just to say that we need to connect with him to better understand what is actually happening. There might be some easy things that can be done. Maybe the direction of the way corn is planted. Maybe it's not as much of an issue when the soybean is in the field versus corn in the field. Maybe there's something else that can be built up here in the bottom. You also note these few trees right here are no longer there. I don't know when and who took them out, but these pine trees right here are not there. I don't know. I'd be curious to know from Mr. Patel if he knows when they were. And that's not his property, of course. It's on our side of the property. I'd be curious to know if he happened to have noticed a difference once those trees were gone. But that's kind of where we're at.
Okay. Yeah, no, I have to say it wasn't that sloppy. I mean, I had regular shoes on, and I wasn't in any danger of getting them wet or anything. So it was wet, but not sloppy wet.
Yeah.
Did the topic of some drainage issues and wetness down in that corner that we're talking about, did that come up with Rachel and the soil conservation plan at all? I don't recall if
No, because
that question.
we didn't cover that field.
Okay.
We, in general, we have asked her in the past about what Dan has showed us, that major area coming down towards the drainage basin, and she said she thought that was in pretty good shape, and that the plans that Tim had for that were to broaden it out a little bit. We're going to be okay for the time being.
Okay. Yeah, and I mean, Dan, when you're going out, just let me know if I'm available. I'm happy to go there too, and just kind of think out loud in terms of what can be done.
Yeah.
There's no, as we all know, water cannot be stopped. It can only be directed.
Yeah.
Directed.
And I mean, that is the good news, right? Is that there's a retention basin right there, but to the extent that we can direct some of it that direction, perhaps, but I'm not really sure.
Okay.
Okay, you were on 2088
Farmview Drive, so off of the Leadham property here. So this is Mr. Harding at 2088, and there was a number of trees. There was a couple trees that we had that died. Leadham, we've had a number of trees die over the last few years that had to get removed in some form or another. But he had reached out to the township directly about just the overgrowth along the tree line and the buffer. So Mike and I went out on Saturday as well. We walked this field too. So what we did is we actually came in through over here on Powderhorn and walked up around the corner up here, basically the whole way up to here. And Dennis, I don't remember, but I think you were already on the board when we kind of worked on this stretch over here. So there was a number of trees that were cleaned up through here, and then a whole bunch of brush, and the fence was replaced in a section right here as well. Part of the fence wasn't even there, and then part of the fence was so overgrown it had to be removed with the brush removal to be able to fix the rest of the fence there. So this section remains looking in pretty good shape. And if you do look at this section over here, I would say, maybe half of it is in good to great shape. And then half of it is probably pretty overgrown and needs some work. Especially this lower end versus this higher end is a little bit better.
It's pretty obvious. Sorry, Dan. It's pretty obvious to Dan and I that some of the homeowners have taken the liberty and really, to our benefit, have kept the buffer area fairly clean. However they get to it, we're not sure.
And when you say overgrown, are we talking about brush that can just be, kind of mowed down with the right equipment, or are you talking about trees of some size?
A bit of everything. And some of it is some trees or just very overgrown bushes.
Yeah. Okay.
And we can talk about this a little bit later. We have another agenda item, but kind of as it relates to this, and let's talk about it more in the Environmental Advisory Council section, because I had some thoughts around that. But it'd be interesting. And Dennis, you may be the right person here. I'm not sure. But it'd be interesting to walk that with somebody that really knows the species that we're looking at. To know what is a native species, what is a not a native species, like what bushes, what trees are we really looking at, to know what might be more appropriate on how to handle that.
Okay.
But
The person you want from the EAC is Alan Dresser.
is he on the Environmental Advisory Council?
Yes. Yep.
Oh, yeah.
And he would know, everything.
So that's what we had that on the agenda to talk about in a little bit. But yeah, John, I listened to that last meeting from last week, and he seemed super intelligent about what he was talking about. I was very impressed with what he knew. That was just from listening to him talk for like 10 minutes.
Well, let's see if we can't coordinate and get and walk that line with him if he's willing.
Yeah.
And make some judgment calls.
We can talk about the Environmental Advisory Council in a few minutes, but I think basically where Mike and I came out, and Mike, I think you ended up getting some pictures of this lower end. I didn't, but I think you did. You took some pictures of the lower end here.
I did.
Okay.
I don't know if I can bring them up or not.
No, I don't think you need to right now necessarily, but maybe for Dennis and John's benefit at least later. But basically, Dennis, where Mike and I came out is, I don't think this is an urgent project in any way, but I think this is, let's get it on the list. Let's rank this as it relates to other properties where we know we have buffer maintenance issues and overgrowth on the buffers, where we think we do need to have somebody come in and kind of get back to, maybe we can build out a little bit more, or what we talked about before, about concept of like a rolling buffer clean out project in some form.
Okay.
Yeah. To me, that's what's needed is a concerted effort like we did in that first area you showed us, Dan, to get clean out, but it's not everywhere. It's not sort of just mow everything down. So,
yeah. And it goes back to, different homeowners or different neighbors treat the shared property line in different ways, right? You go up this corner here, some of these fence lines are immaculate, and in some cases they're not. And it's just a matter of how much is the homeowner maintaining the fence and that property line, as well as what we're doing. And, certainly it's a joint effort. And, we probably haven't done anything in that lower section over here for 3 years. Right. So definitely worth doing something and getting in there and mowing that. The buffer has been mowed, but not cleaning out up towards the fence line in some cases.
And do you feel that the farmer on this property is maintaining a proper buffer distance between the fence and the crop where he's planting?
Yeah, I think it's a very nicely defined line and buffer.
Good. Okay.
I should say the regular part of the buffer. And then it becomes the area closer to the fence that isn't necessarily maintained.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
But
yeah,
I think we got a plan there.
Yeah, it sounds good. Okay, thanks, Dan. So a segue into how our neighbors are maintaining their side of the fence we've put up is a good one into the next one, which is the Patels at 1524 Poundal. I sent everyone some pictures of the condition it looks like now. You have to go back in your memory and remember what it looked like before, the fence line that is, and it was overgrown. But I think, Dennis, you identified it as sort of wild grapevines, which it did look like.
Yeah.
And so we cleared that out pretty well. And the Patels on their side have done a nice job of maintaining and mowing, and looks like weed whacking. So I think all this left is, I thought I'd go out, one of the nice days this fall and just kind of pick at where some of the vines have grown into. It's a chain link fence, and they've wound themselves very closely to some of that chain links, and just take those out just for completion, rather than having them hang there. But the burning that was done, and the weed killer has done a nice job on it. The stuff is dead.
Good.
So I think that's all that's needed there.
Yeah, I thought it looked pretty good.
Yeah. So the next thing is that, just to confirm, I got, this is the trees along on Longshore. This is along Woodside across from the golf course. So I confirmed that there, and also as it turns to Dolington, that the township did go and clean up the overhanging limbs over the walking path. So just so we're aware of that, they do that, and if we get complaints about that, that's for the township to mostly take care of. Then along that same area of Woodside with sycamore trees, Dennis, you are proposing putting up some signs to respect and protect our trees and not staple things or nail things to those trees.
Right. I was out there, I guess it was last weekend, with some staple pullers and a hammer. We know there was all good intentions, stapling up positive messages on those trees. However, it took quite a while, and I did 8 trees. They averaged about 15 staples per tree.
Ooh.
Somebody, went pretty nuts with a staple gun, all half-inch staples, not easy to remove. And I managed to aggravate my tendonitis in my right arm, and I'm not doing any more trees for a month or two. But it's just not healthy for the trees in the long run. I thought if we posted along there a couple, 3 or 4 signs around, from each end and around the corner or so, positive, friendly signs about respecting our trees. Please don't attach screws, staples, or nails, to the tree, because it does damage the health of the tree and its long-term survivability. Not trying to yell at anybody, but be just a positive approach to remind them that they're telephone poles. And I contacted Bob Shaw. He makes, apparently, from my understanding, the kind of signs that we have, those heavy foam signs that we have to mark our farmland preservation. I was not thinking of that. I was thinking of a more standard, rectangular speed limit sign kind of thing, smaller, that had that message. That apparently is not what he does necessarily. He had a proposal. I told him we would talk about it. He said if you wanted a really heavy aluminum sign, it could be hundreds of dollars per sign. There was an alternative that was more like $50 a sign, which makes more sense to me. I've done a little shopping around online with manufacturing custom signs. It appears to me we could, with not counting what we'd mount them on, certainly not the trees. We might spend a couple $100 on 4 signs. John, I don't know if the township is if the township, if we did have those signs, could install them with the standard kind of vertical iron type of structure that they use for other street signs. If that's something that we could ask the township to do, again, if we do this, if we buy the signs, or just what would be involved in posting something like that.
Let me just, before John answers, I just history is that all those green signs that you see were the posts and everything were purchased by us, but the township put them up, and they're very nice about it.
Okay.
Greg from Public Works has been very cooperative and helpful with us.
Okay.
Thanks. I don't have to answer now.
I thought I'd save you an answer there.
Well, so I guess what I would like to ask my fellow board members is, do you think that we should post some signage, and should we spend a couple $100, let's say, all rough estimates at this point, to procure such a sign? Is that something that we as a board want to pursue?
So how much is, so per sign, we're talking a couple hundred?
No, I was looking at that line. I was thinking 4 signs, one at each extreme end, and then a couple along the way as you approach the corner. And I think all told, it would be a couple hundred for those 4. It might be run $50 a sign or something like that. That's
including the posts, which would have to be.
No, that does not include the post.
Okay.
I haven't looked at that. I don't know if the township, kind of has a supply of those, and that would be part of the installation, or just what. And I could work with the township manager to try to get some clarity on that. But like I say, it's not the end of the world if we don't do it. It's just a thought. I don't have strong passion in either direction. Kind of makes sense to me, but I'm looking to you, Mike and Dan, for your opinion.
And you go first.
Yeah. So I was thinking, I think along the same lines as you, by the way, with what the sign would look like 18 by 24 inches or something like that. The metal sign. That's what I was thinking too, by the way. So I think I like the idea of it. As we think about the reasons, we haven't had a lot of history of signs being put up on those trees. Certainly a lot recently, right? And, weighing that versus just more signs that aren't necessarily nice and pretty for the edge of a cornfield that has those beautiful trees and the walkway and all that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So I kind of weigh those is in my mind what I'm thinking about. But I think I still come down on the side that I think it's worth putting up a couple signs. And yeah, I would think 2 or 3 is probably the right amount. It's worth just double checking in our minds here. What other locations could there also potentially be worthwhile to put a sign?
I don't know that we've run into this anywhere else. Just thinking about that, I would favor. I'm with you, Dan. I think 2 signs at either end and maybe 1 in the middle at the most. The thing is, I would also, and I'd be in favor of doing it. I would be in favor of fewer words on the sign.
Right.
There's a lot of explanation there about it, which is all great stuff. But if you want to catch somebody's eyes and have it stick, I think we need fewer.
Yeah, I agree with that. I've pruned a lot of that language. I approached it almost as a little bit of quasi-educational benefit, for the community, kind of like a sign you'd see in a state park that's explaining what you're looking at. But that being said, I agree, and I would I think that can be cut way back, and I can redraft something and circulate it to you.
Yeah.
So,
I think, I don't know if we need a motion, but I could certainly make a motion to have Dennis explore this further and come back with estimates and approach the township about installation and come back to the board, and then we can take a vote on what you've come up with.
Okay.
Or maybe just make it an action. We don't really need a motion.
Okay, let's make it an action item. That's what I'll do. Thank you.
Okay. All right. I'm just making a note here. Okay, very good, Dennis. Great job. Appreciate that. So on the bamboo remediation, I haven't heard very recently from Matt Corcoran, but within the last month I've spoken to him and things seem to be on track. I don't know, Dan, if you've gotten any more invoices.
No.
Okay, I think he plans to go out and cut and treat one more time before the end of the year, and that would be the 4th. So I don't think there's any issues there. Mr. Kaplan's fence, want to go over that again? Is there I think we decided that we're not going to do anything with that. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think this actually goes back to the same thing. We got to wait until, I think our better bet here is to wait till somebody buys that plot. Because they certainly know, I know that there's a property line there, and the fence, the issue is the fence does not match the property line. And so it'll need to be, of course, fixed when somebody builds something there.
Right.
There's also the driveway that they would need to put in, which is where the property line issue starts up on that end. Mm-hmm. So we'll certainly need to be, tuned in to whenever something starts happening over there.
Got it.
But that's where we had come out, was that we weren't going to do anything. We weren't going to actively do anything ourselves now, us paying for it, right? Or doing anything else, or, trying to rip down that fence on our own.
Got it. And then I'd like to go back. I skipped over Makefield Brook, but I know, Dennis, you've been out there recently and complimented Mr. Solomon on the work he's done on his side.
Yes, we spent a lot of time and money on bamboo remediation there. He has a very large patch of bamboo on the property. That's the spot where the tree fell and destroyed or crushed much of the fence. Anyway, when I was out there earlier in the week, I saw that he had hired someone on his side of the fence, on his property, to remove the bamboo, put down a heavy plastic tarp, a heavy plastic barrier, probably a good 8 or 10 feet from the fence into his property, creating, a bit of a buffer there from his bamboo patch to our property, which will only help us on our side. So I shot him a quick note, and we've had a few situations along that line, and he continues to prove to be a good neighbor.
Very good. Yeah.
As a reference, just because I was looking at it then and I added it up, I think we spent $10,350 last year bamboo related.
Okay. Just, if I could, Mike, one other thing from touring Makefield Brook, right at the driveway on Quarry Hill Road, where you enter that field, mm-hmm. There is a silver maple tree whose top, about maybe 25 foot high, just broken in half, dangling right along the driveway.
Oh. You
can drive around this dangling treetop, but a big wind or something, it's going to come down, and I don't know if it fall across the driveway, it could fall close to the road. I think we need to get someone out there to remove that broken treetop. I was pulling on them things, but it's probably 14 inches in diameter. It's a big, heavy.
And what type of tree was it?
Silver maple.
Silver maple. Yeah, I have things to talk to Matt about, so I'll add that.
Yeah, I don't want that to come down unexpectedly or unplanned. It probably won't hurt anything and just kind of be in the way, but it carries a risk. So that should really come down.
Okay, good. I'll add that to my list to talk to him about.
Okay.
And then on Farmview 2, I know that Mike Kirk is aware of the growth of bamboo between Sunnyside Lane, 7 Sunnyside Lane, where Mrs. Reinert had remediated there. And there was still some between the fence. I thought I saw something, maybe you can remind me, where she or a contractor had cleaned that out. And there on our side, I had asked Matt to take a look on our side. That was kind of in transition from Eric Yeager when he left. So I'm going to recheck with Matt and see what he's thought about that. That's on Farmview 2. Right, Farmview 2.
View 2, okay.
So that's the north side. I'd call that the north side of, what is it there? Dolington, Woodside, Dolington?
West,
Yes. Yeah.
northwest side there. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll follow up on that with him. Okay. So Dan, anything? Yeah, please update us on the Environmental Advisory Council.
Yeah. So, right, the email came out. I don't know if you guys received it direct, but I received that email from the township that was on behalf of the Environmental Advisory Council regarding planting trees, which I think they did I think it was Saturday that they were planting trees.
Right.
And I don't recall, but I know that they did it again. I don't know if it was like a month ago or 2 months ago. They had done it as well. I remember seeing some pictures or some people out doing it then too. And it just made me think, is there anything that we should be doing or think about doing with them to some respect? Like, if they're looking for other areas to plant trees, do we have an area that could be planted, that trees could be planted, and we help contribute towards that? It was just really just thinking out loud. That was all, just made me think. And so I did listen into a majority, if not all, of their last meeting that they had. And the one thing that did stick out to me, and John, Alan Dresser, is that his name?
Yeah, Alan Dresser is the guy's name.
Yeah, older. I couldn't really tell actually if he was older, but I think he had I think he did have white hair. Couldn't really tell.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. But he seemed incredibly knowledgeable about trees and species and the thought process around them. And it was interesting. He was talking about the Prickett Preserve property for a little bit and just reading the proposal for the development there and about, the number of trees they're taking down versus the number of trees they're planting. And then what piqued my interest too was talking about planting trees and what kind of, I guess the ordinance is specific enough that they need to dictate or state out what kind of trees or what species of trees they're planting. And that's where he had found some issue, is that they aren't necessarily native species to the area. And that's just what kind of jogged my mind and thinking about, even when we are thinking about, brush removal or tree removal, we don't necessarily have the same, we only have ever taken down trees that were dead or dying, or brush that is overgrowth in areas where we are not supposed to have any overgrowth. But that just made me kind of think about that same line of, native versus non-native and, removal of some of these things. And, Mike even goes back to when we had our very initial bamboo conversations around using chemicals to kill bamboo or not. And some of the feedback we had received from a number of different people, especially on the agricultural and conservation side, was what is worse, the chemical or the non-native species that is expanding at a rapid growth. And in a lot of cases, people claim that non-native species actually creates more destruction than the chemicals used to kill stuff. So, but that's just where my mind was going with that, and thinking about, is there something? Maybe not. And it isn't even necessarily Alan that we need to connect with, but it might be worthwhile that we just kind of keep that in the back of our minds as we're thinking about some of the stuff that we're removing or how we're doing it.
Okay. Kind of check in with it. If we put a plan together, say for Leadham, I'm not sure. I mean,
I don't even know if that would be the case. I can't think of something right now that would be a scenario necessarily that we would need to get them, but because sometimes our growth is just growth that needs to be removed. It isn't really an option around native or non-native, but I don't know if there is anything currently that we would or should include them on or ask them on or get an opinion on. But Dennis, I think you were starting to talk there too. Right?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'm presuming their meetings are public Zoom meetings like this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, their meetings are public as well. And unfortunately, I have to drop for another meeting. But yeah,
Okay.
Alan's a great guy, and I have his contact info if you need it to follow up with him.
Yeah, John, before you go, volunteers, anybody for the board? I wanted to bring that up.
I'm working on that too. Yes.
Okay. All right.
Thanks,
Thanks
John.
for joining us.
Yep. Thanks.
Thank you, John. Appreciate
Bye-bye.
your.
Okay.
Well, I guess where my thought was going, Dan, is maybe it would pay that the three of us make an attempt over the next couple months to view their meetings and look at their agendas and their topics and think out loud if there are areas for overlap or cooperation.
Yeah.
They're holding a recycling day or something that doesn't really connect, but there could be areas that certainly do. So it only makes sense that we kind of educate ourselves. To.
Absolutely. Part of our goals as an organization may overlap in some degree, but certainly not all. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it all matches up. But there could be something at some point in time, but I think it's worth it might be worth connecting at some point just to see. But I think it's a great idea, Dennis. Why don't we just keep listening to a couple of things that they have, see if they do have anything coming up that we think may be worthwhile.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
But I think they do work a lot with Monica. It sounds like I think Monica and Monica's team coordinates with them quite a bit. Is the way it seemed, but that's just kind of from listening to one meeting.
Okay. Great. Yeah. Thank you, Dan. Thanks very much. I'm going to flip things here. So we'll do review of action items really last, just before adjournment. So I have one other thing, next meeting. So we've heard from Dennis. I heard from you, from John. I haven't collated the responses, but Dan, please look at an email that I sent about our next meeting. Are you both okay with one meeting between now and the end of the year, sort of end of November, early December?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, with the caveat that, if we it's a little bit harder for us to get something scheduled, right? And so depending upon when that meeting is and when our tax returns are done and Robert Small available to join, that may or may not work for when he can run through the compilation with us.
Okay. So take a look at what I've sent out, Dan, and see if any of those dates work and if that's late enough for him to have completed.
Yeah. So I would suggest after November 15th, but it looks like we might be looking towards November 30 or December 2nd.
Yeah. I don't have the offhand John and Dennis's, but what was you? Yeah, Dennis.
I'm going out of town probably December 4th. I may leave December 3rd and through December 9th, May 10th.
So actually, we might be to November 3rd. John is not available on the 2nd. So it looks like it might be Monday, November 30th may be preferred.
Okay. And you're okay then?
Yeah.
How about time?
I'm okay on the 30th.
Okay, good. And how about time of day? Is 5 or 5:30 doable for you, Dan, or it should be?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. All right.
Good man.
For us retired people, it's a little easier. So, all right. Any other business before I go through the action items? At least what I captured. Nope. Okay. So actions. So I'm going to send my photos of Leadham that Dan and I walked to everyone, so you can see more about the buffer situation there. We need to schedule a walk of Leadham to plan out next steps on the buffer. Is there a time we can pick now?
Uh,
How does this, I mean, no time like the present, what does this weekend look like?
I'm away most of this weekend.
Okay.
This weekend is tough for me too.
All right. Where does that put us? Saturday, Halloween, that probably, I don't know if that makes a difference. Saturday,
Yeah.
October 31st?
Yeah, Halloween might get a little hectic. We have a Halloween and a birthday that day. We're trying to figure out. I could do probably Sunday, November 1st in the morning.
Dan?
That works.
I can do that.
Yeah.
Earlier the better.
You said that was a Sunday, right?
Yeah.
Sunday the 1st, November 1st.
How early can you do, Dan?
5:30.
Okay, now you're teasing.
I'm normally up at 5:30 every day. So.
Okay. Well, so what were your preference, Dennis? 7? You want to do it really early?
Yeah, like I said, earlier the better. I mean, sun comes up around 6:30. We could do 7 or something like that.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit later than that, but it's light enough
Okay.
at 7.
Is it late enough at 7? Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Sunday, November. I'll send something out about that.
Okay, good.
And Dennis, you're going to work on the sign development of the signs and installation. Work further on that. I guess you're going to come up with a more final proposal for wording. And
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Mike is going to talk to Matt Corcoran about 7 Sunnyside Lane on the bamboo on our side of the fence. Follow up with Mike Kirk if needed on the neighbor's side. And then the treetop needs to be looked at. We'll have Matt take a look at that on Makefield Brook.
Right.
Along the driveway there, I wrote.
Right.
John's working on getting volunteers for Farmland Board, which is good. And anybody who is out there who's still on the call and wants to volunteer on our board, you're very welcome to do so. And then we just made a pledge between ourselves to listen in on the EAC calls when we see them coming up on the calendar and look for future potential collaboration.
Right.
What did I miss? Anything?
No.
I think the only thing I had was, and I don't know if this is an action item really, but Dan was going to try to get the QuickBooks up and going so that the invoices can be out in December.
Oh, right.
Yeah, good. Yeah, thank you.
Invoices in December. So Dan, just on the tax deadlines, so nonprofits have until mid-November. I always heard the October date.
Yeah, so nonprofits, a calendar year nonprofit extended due date is November 15th.
Ah, okay.
Everything was extended this year.
All right.
That's the normal extended date for a nonprofit. Yeah.
Right. Got it. All right. Well, I don't have anything else. If no one else does, we'll call the meeting to adjournment. And thank you for being on. And thank everyone who might be out there for listening in and watching.
Thank you, Mike.
Okay.
Thank you, Mike.
Go Eagles.
Ready to adjourn.